Hello, everyone. My name is OfDiceandPenYT. Here back with our newest episode of Behind the Screen. Today with me are our wonderful guests, Cameron, Amber, and Invader. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Greetings and salutations. That was
I'm very surprised you
I'm
didn't say
sorry.
anything besides that.
I saved the out of pocket stuff for sessions.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So, speaking of the sessions, Cameron, I really did enjoy that one shot we did this week.
Thank you very
It's
much.
A lot of fun.
I appreciate that.
Yep, the rest of you will get to hear that next week.
No, this is going the same week. Is it not?
This is the one that's going out.
Oh no, it'll be out a whole week before this comes out because we have that second episode. I only posted the one episode of.
We have one episode behind the screen lined up. We also have one episode of Blight of Far End lined up. So this will go out, and then the few days later, the one shot goes out.
Okay, so we could talk about spoilers for that session in this one?
Not for the one shot.
Okay.
Because the next one is going to be the one I hopped in halfway through. Quite a few Honorians going out with that. So it'll be Sunday, that one. Tuesday, the episode of episode behind the screen. Yeah, it'll be like a whole week later. Yeah, I'm wrong. I'm going to get that out. All right. So, why don't we just hop right into it? How do you guys handle action economy in your games? For those of us who have DM'd before.
So, Delta Green is real world, and what I run is modern day. Everything happens approximately 2023, 2024. Or when we started the game, it was happening 2020, with the exception of the pandemic does not happen in my world. So basically, I don't have to create economy. I just use what we already have. Occasionally, I send them into alternate universes, but honestly, I don't pay too much attention to money when we do.
Oh, no, action economy.
Oh, action economy. You know what? We are apparently having one of those days, everyone. Hi.
We totally didn't wake up like an hour ago.
Hour ago? He tried 20 minutes.
I'm just sick.
That too. I am still recovering from a nasty cold. You can probably hear it in my voice today. Action economy for Delta Green works very different than other games. The only time we really worry about it is during combat. And, well, combat in Delta Green is simple. Highest dex goes first, lowest dex goes last, and you get one action.
Seems very straightforward.
When it comes to action economy in games, that's a very difficult question. Normally I try to sort of follow what the system has. When it comes to D&D, obviously you've got the action, the bonus action movement. I'm not really that strict. If someone's like, I'm 10 feet away from an opponent, and they go, is it okay if I move 10 feet forward, cast a spell, and then use the rest of my movement to back away? Yeah, that sounds like a plan. That's the... That's...
Are you just like complete pause?
Hang on.
There we go. There we go.
It's gone.
We're now.
Holy.
Oh, it's fun. Technical difficulties,
Yeah.
everyone. This is what you don't normally see.
Yeah.
But
is it all sorted now?
It's left in. So,
Are we good now?
yes, you are perfect, as always.
Oh, thank you.
Y'all gonna make my teeth rot out.
But yeah, really. Just so long as players have an idea of what they're going to be doing in their turn when it comes to combat, that's all that's necessary, really.
All right. Staying with the theme on combat for this next question, what are ways you guys tailor your combats to your players?
So, again, Delta Green is what I run. So, the big thing is everybody's got guns, or if they're guns, they have knives. One of the biggest things is I have to use monsters regularly. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to tether my phone because apparently my video is being stupid. I mean, all of the technical difficulties this morning, everybody. Cameron, why don't you step in and take over, and I will finish my answer after.
So when it comes to tethering monsters, first thing I will look at is the location. Where is the combat going to be taking place? Is it taking place in an urban environment? Is it a rural setting? If it's a rural setting, well, even then it will depend where in that major aspect. Are we in the mountains? Are we in a forest? Are we in the middle of the desert? Are we in the sewers? Are we in a flying city that has a giant super weapon ready to blow stuff up? Are we underwater? Are we in one of the elemental planes? That sort of thing. So looking at those creatures that exist. And then it is a case of trying to balance difficulty with players' capabilities. I've mentioned this before. I once had a 6-player game where 6 level 1s went up against a gelatinous cube, and the gelatinous cube didn't land a single hit. In another combat setting, the combat ended up taking the whole session because there were so many enemies. That's just how it worked out. Also to take into consideration is how cruel you feel like being. If you're having a fairly easy encounter, that's fine, but if every single combat is underpowered, players are going to get a little bit bored. So the trick is to try and mix it up a little bit. It's always nice to just occasionally throw a really powerful enemy at the players, or a really powerful group at the players, so that they get close to TPK, but don't actually get TPK'd. So the trick is to try and make sure that doesn't happen. And I am proud to say I have yet to cause a single TPK.
I have caused a couple of them. One of them was when I was young and did not know how to balance games. So that was a learning experience. I killed the entire party in the first room with a handful of kobolds. Although we were playing second ed at the time, so things were also
Always
done
the
very
fucking
differently.
kobolds.
Yeah, always. But in like I was saying, in Delta Green, because we use a lot of guns. And one of the mechanics in Delta Green is this thing called lethality, where if you use a certain weapon, basically a semi-auto or an auto, you, instead of rolling 1d10 or whatnot, you roll a d100, 2d10, and you add the numbers together. So if you roll 72, it does 9 damage. If you roll 18, it does 9. Why am I going for 9s today? That type of thing. But if you roll under a certain percentage, usually either 10 or 20%. So if you roll like a 4, it's an automatic lethality, and it doesn't matter. They die. But at the same time, there's some creatures that are immune to lethality, so they would only take 4 damage.
I have a harder time balancing for Delta Green than I do for D&D as a result, because I did a one-shot where the players went up against basically these clockwork androids and nearly successfully killed half the party, all over a bag of sushi.
I was not in that game.
Yes, you were. This was the one in Boston when you were rescuing Satoshi Nakamoto.
Oh, I forgot about that game. There have been a lot of them. I honestly, I adjust on the fly. If it looks like I'm going to accidentally wipe the party, I will lower the HP or, like double the damage they're doing or the players are doing, or cut back on the damage the monsters are doing. Players don't know what percentile it takes to hit, so I can fudge the numbers there too and say something hit when it didn't or something didn't hit when it did, if I need to balance it that way. Basically, it's the old GM trick of you roll the blank dice.
All right.
But usually my players do okay.
Oh crap! This next question is also having to deal with combat. Was there ever a time you had a player misremember how a spell or ability worked, and how did you handle it?
I actually have the opposite problem. We discovered last week that I have been using one of my spells wrong. I have been wasting action items on something that was a bonus action. And it was my big heal too. So we do not. For me to be able to use a bonus action for that after I drop my attack is a big difference.
I always get the players to bring up because we've only ever played online, we've never played with physically. I always get the players to bring up the spell, because 9 times out of 10, when they're misremembering, it is genuinely a case of misremembering. And I give players the benefit of the doubt and be like, oh no, that's not how that's worded. And they'll go, oh, okay, yeah, that's my fault. And I've yet to have a player try to do the, oh no, I totally forgot but in actuality, they were hoping to try and sneak one past. But generally, I tend to find that those ones are also the ones that try to be as much of a rules debater as much as possible. Not a rules lawyer, a rules debater. So those ones, I will be a lot more strict on and go, no, that's what the spell says. I don't care. That's what the spell says. You want to argue with me? Okay, we can argue after the session, but for now, spell says this, that's what you do.
What about you, Invader? Have you ever misremembered a spell or had somebody on the party do that?
I've only minorly done it, like not to the extent like y'all's stories go, like just like misremembering, like, oh, it has this level of range, or oh, this will actually damage someone. Yeah, minor things that like another player or a DM has like just given me like the, hey, I don't think you'd be able to do it like when you were this far away, or like, hey, this will actually damage a player, and that player is super low, so you may want to reconsider. Minor things like that, that we've all had happen to us once or twice. Another player misremembering how a spell works, though. First-time DM with 2 first-time players back in the campaign. That wasn't really a campaign at the start, just friends doing goofy shit before it became an actual D&D campaign. We had a thing where we didn't roll for spells or anything. We would just roll a d20 for its effectiveness. Because, again, we didn't intend for it to become a full-on thing until it became a full-on thing. And we did go for, like, if you get it perfect, you get double damage. And my friend had Eldrick's Blast. And because of how we ran the game at the very start of it, Eldrick's Blast was kind of like a Thanos snap for most enemies for a little bit with the first-time DM and, like, first-time players not understanding how it fully works. So, like, that's the extent of, like, for me personally and seeing it happen to friends, that's my extent.
Well, since you brought up first-time DMs and first-time players, I actually have a decent question for that. Of you, if someone wanted to get into D&D, what do you recommend they do first or anything else?
Run.
Play.
Find good friends.
Because as soon as you play one session, D&D becomes your life.
Yeah, you're trapped. Basically, you think, oh, my friend group's no longer playing.
No matter
so
how long a hiatus you take, you're trapped forever.
Yeah, like, oh, my friends are done playing. My D&D friends are done playing. I guess I'm done forever. Man, I miss playing D&D. Let me go on this Reddit forum and try to find someone who'd be willing to play with me.
No matter how hard you try, wizards will find you.
Pretty much, yeah.
Watson knows what they're doing.
On a genuine note, though, I would genuinely suggest to them maybe watch something online first. Go in completely unaware of how a game mechanic goes and be like, go watch a one-shot episode. Go watch an episode of Dimension 20. Go watch an episode of Critical Role. They've done plenty of one-shots or small campaigns. And then look to see if this is a sort of dynamic they're okay with, the friendly dynamic that develops from there. Also, just caution them that not every table is like that. Because some people have different things that they enjoy. And just be accepting that sometimes you're going to, if you try to get into it, you might discover, I actually like this aspect more. And it might be a case of, well, most of my friends enjoy this aspect, but I actually don't. And that's perfectly fine. I know people who enjoy... Yeah, I know people who enjoy the combat aspect and the dice rolling aspect of D&D, the more mechanical side to it, whereas I prefer more of the letting the rule of cool have a say and the role play aspect. That's not to say we're not friends. We just have to acknowledge that and work together to make sure that the game is is good for the both of us if we want to play together.
So my advice is actually very different from that. I recommend people don't watch one-shots, don't watch actual plays. Go in blind. Actual plays, you're going to look at it and be like, oh, everybody's an actor, or everybody does voices, everybody is like super cool and does this or that or whatever. That's not true. When I GM, I don't do voices. I might do an accent from time to time, but I don't do voices. Stuff like that. Go to your local game store. They will have games that are run by volunteers, or sometimes they will have paid GMs who run games specifically for newbies, for people who've never played before. And that is a great way to get into the game. You're going to have a handful of people around who can answer questions and help walk you through everything. And it's just a great way to experience it.
My answer is a bit long-winded. That's going to go into a little story, so apologies.
No need to apologize.
No, please.
So, for years...
Anything to get that time longer.
So, for years... Also, Amber, I don't know what you mean you don't do impressions. You did a perfect impression of Patch one session.
Every once in a while I'll pull one out, but it's not often.
Yeah, exactly. It's a magic power you could only use once.
It was perfect. You couldn't tell the difference.
Right? I don't know how I pulled it off.
And your mic quality sounded different too. Anyway, for years I didn't want to play the game because there was this one episode of a cartoon I watched as a kid, a regular show, and in the episode they portrayed D&D as just like this overly complicated, math-heavy mess that didn't seem fun to me. And it's like, why would I want to play a game that's so heavily involved with math when I suck at math? I now know the math involved is basic addition and measurements. But it's like, I wouldn't have fun with this game, and I don't get how others would. And until I watched an animatic series called Fool's Gold. And I saw the kind of funniness you could have with that. How you could accidentally summon a Tarrasque to destroy a city if you're not careful. And then I started watching Reddit stories of people talking about their experiences playing D&D. And it's like, wait, so this game is just a fucking joint effort of fun with friends? That's all it is? And once it clicked with me that that's what it was, my interest was piqued into playing it. Which leads into my segue. I wanted to play it, but I had nobody to play it with. My recommendation is find people you mesh with. Plain and simple. That's the best advice I can give for a newbie player. If you can find someone you can mentally connect with, someone who you can reasonably see having fun, spending like an hour or two to just doing fun stuff and like working out stuff, then you're golden. I took a big risk applying for this because I'm the most socially anxious motherfucker with new people. But I'm like roleplay heavy. That does sound fun. And I was lucky I fucking mentally clicked with Zane. And then also mentally clicked with these two also. It's hard, but put yourself out there. Try to find people you mentally click with. Also, advice for a first time session when you don't know what to do. I'm gonna say this to a new player who's like going into it because I had this mentality when I first played. No, the players don't hate that you're taking a little time trying to figure stuff out. No, they don't hate you. We've all had the first time jitters. They don't hate you. Stop thinking that they hate you.
And if they do, they're not the right players.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times on a first session I've been like, oh god, they're hating me. Fuck. It's like they don't hate you. They're being patient with you. And I'm screaming at this as I'm screaming to myself back in the day. They don't hate you.
It's easy to feel anxious at first, especially when you're
a newbie.
Getting into a game that you've never done before. That being said, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't know how something works or you can't figure something out or you just don't know what your next best move is, ask the other players. Somebody's got a book. Somebody's got experience.
The words I will say is your fellow players / your DM won't see you as a burden if you ask, how the hell do I do this? They don't see you as a burden. They just see you as someone who's learning.
And if they do see you as a problem, they're not a good player.
Exactly. And I said this like on the last episode that's going to come out, I think soon. Don't be scared to leave.
Never be scared to walk away from a table if you're uncomfortable. Ever.
D&D is a group effort. If you're uncomfortable in the group you're in, then leave. And I know it's hard, and I know you feel like you're ruining the game. Let me tell you this: if a DM is making you feel like you're going to ruin the game because you're leaving, they're a bad DM.
Or that goes same for other players.
Exactly.
If other players are making you uncomfortable or trying to pressure you into staying when you're uncomfortable or trying to pressure you into playing a certain way. If the problem is another player and it's just one person, you don't want to leave the table, go to the GM. Part of the GM's job is to handle this stuff. If the GM won't handle it, walk away from the table, no matter how much you don't want to. Because your mental health, your safety is more important than this game. There will always be another table. There will always be another game.
If you feel yourself like rolling your eyes or like wanting to like punch another player because they are like making it all about them when this is like, I don't know, your moment or another person's moment in the spotlight, and they just took that moment for themselves and you want to punch them, go to the DM and tell them, it's like, hey, can you tell this player to fuck off with that, please? I can't tell you how many times literally just going to the DM, asking them to tell the other person to fuck off with that has solved so many issues in a campaign. I know it's hard to fucking go forward and like, you know, be honest that you're getting annoyed and not having fun because of one person, feeling like you're being the downer. You're not. If one player is making you angry and not have fun, that player's the downer, not you.
Yes.
Also, there's a very good chance that the other players may be having the same issue, but they don't want to bring it up because they feel like they're going to be the problem. And as soon as one player comes forward and says, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable with this person," all of a sudden the other players will have the not the courage, but the willingness to also come forward and say, "Yeah, I'm having problems with this player as well."
And don't be afraid to talk to other players if your concern is the GM. You know, if you're having problems with the GM and you're comfortable talking to other players, it's okay to, outside of games, say, "Hey, I noticed this. Are you seeing the same thing?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best advice I think we all give. Never be scared to ask for. Never be scared to come forward if you're having an issue.
And honestly, as a female at the table, I have had to do this several times. Gaming is definitely more inclusive now than it was when I started. But there are still times when it's a boys' club. There are times where, because I'm female, a table isn't safe for me or I don't fit in. And that's okay. It happens. And honestly, early on, it was definitely hard to walk away from those tables. But it gets easier. And honestly, that is every time I talk to a female who wants to get into tabletop gaming, that is my first piece of advice. Don't be afraid to walk away from a table if you're uncomfortable.
That was heavy, first off. Really good. That's probably the best piece of advice there for a new player, definitely. All right, let's probably go something a little lighter now. Cleanse the palate a bit. Oh, this one's pretty simple. Besides the 3 core rule books and a set of dice, what can a player purchase that you think will help them with their games if they can afford it?
Pencil and paper. Always take extra notebooks, extra pencils. Extra character sheets. Always have a blank character sheet on you. Honestly, I say have a duplicate of your character sheet. One of my good friends, I absolutely adore her. Her character sheet is so just like there's holes in it for erasing stuff, and there's little cramped writing in the corners because there's so much stuff on the page. We have been trying to get her to replace that character sheet for over a year now. I think next time we play in person, I'm just going to steal it from her and do it myself.
I'm with Amber on that one. Always have a backup. Even if you play digitally, always have a backup of your character sheets. I want it to be known. I have the character I have, Calvin. I had a whole character sheet for him, and I was proud of that character sheet. I lost it when that campaign got canceled. And I was like, "Hey, Spec, do you still have his character sheet?" My old DM, and she was like, "No, I don't. I'm sorry." And I was like, "Oh, my beauty. The beauty I had for him gone."
On the flip side, my high school GM kept every character sheet we ever made. So every year when we do our yearly gaming thing, because he teaches new people to play, and I always go and assist with that, just so the 1 or 2 girls that decide to join the group can see that there are other girls that play. There are other women who play. And it's okay, and it's fun. But he's got a stack like this thick of character sheets at this point, because we've been doing this for so long. And I know exactly where in that stack my character sheets are. And every year they end up coming out because there's always this one girl who's afraid to use her character properly, or she's got this thing that's similar to my character and she doesn't realize that she can use it. So what I end up doing is I'll jump in as kind of a extra NPC for a portion of the game and show them how it's done.
Speaking of character sheets, I just hear my old characters. I always do.
Most of mine are digitized now. I ended up having to digitize them at some point just because it happens.
These are my first character sheets. I drew them by hand.
My first character sheet. So I'm not going to go get the box. I have not shown you guys. I showed Zane. I have the original purple box from First Ed. That was my first session. My dad's campaign notes are still in that box. More importantly, my brother and I first character sheets are still in that box. My first figure is sitting somewhere up here amongst a million tiny little figures. So I will not show that off.
Sorry, I'm now I'm just reminiscing to my old character.
Right?
Asmarana Mordecai in the Kolmakar. But yeah, definitely. Back to the question: pen and paper is probably one of the best things to bring with you for your sessions.
Snacks.
Water. Never forget your water bottle.
Even if you're playing on Discord, always bring something to drink, because fucking if you're in a roleplay heavy session, you're gonna want to refresh your throat constantly. And this is coming from someone who decided to do a raspy voice character. Always have something to drink.
I recommend hot tea with honey.
And a little
Never
lemon.
drink
The lemon
dairy
also.
in the middle of a session if you're doing voices. That will kill your voices.
I had to learn that the hard way one session.
Also, if you're playing in person, extra dice. Always bring extra dice, because I can guarantee there is somebody at the table who forgot their dice.
Or, just add to the click-crack collection.
Not too. But if you're that person who always has an extra set of dice people can borrow, you're going to become everybody's best friend.
Just make sure to get it back afterwards.
Or, have dice that you don't mind losing if you don't get them back. I have 2 dice bags. One of them is, these are my dice, nobody touches them. One of them is, if you need to borrow dice, you can use anything from that bag. If I don't get them back, I don't care. But I'm a dice dragon.
Speaking of dice, this is probably just like my neurodivergency talking, but you ever see a pair of like really nice dice and you think, man, I want to eat those dice. I just want to help.
Yes. That's pretty cool dice.
There is, a matter of fact, there is a guy at the cons I do that does chocolate dice.
Oh, I bet they taste so good.
They do.
What is he? Does he have a gingerbread rolling board? Or
I don't remember. It's been a while.
because that'd be cool, where you could actually play with the chocolate dice, and since it's food on food contact, when you're done, you can eat it.
The problem with chocolate dice is they melt.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to make cookie dice, that might work. I'm not sure how well the molds would hold, though.
Hard candy dice would work pretty well.
They could, but then you're going to get all sticky.
Yeah.
Could you imagine just swallowing a D20, then going to poop it out later? You get a D1, and then you just squirt blood out your butt.
Oh goodness, Invader.
You know what? I am certain somebody has done that.
I bet you someone said they had hemorrhoids instead of admitting that.
Well, they just had a lot of beetroot after they had the D20. It turns your poop bright red. You think you think you got bum cancer? Nope, you just ate a lot of beetroot. Don't ask how I know this.
As long as you don't have to go to the hospital because it got stuck somewhere. Because that's just embarrassing.
And expensive.
So I have a dinosaur.
Expensive in the US.
Yes, in the US. In other countries, well, it depends.
It's expensive in time in other countries, depending.
If I was a doctor and I had to perform surgery to pull a fucking D20 out of someone's butt, I would have fun with it, and I would pull it out, and I would be like, if I get in that 20, your procedure is free, and I never talk about it. If I get in that one, I'm talking about this with everyone, every other doctor I know.
Oh, we all know that they're going to be talking about it with other doctors because that's technically not a breach of HIPAA, I assume.
It's not, no. Because they could be
as long as they work in that department.
In that department, yes. Unless it's a specialist from another part of the hospital and they're looking for guidance, or if they need to follow up on treatment plans.
If it is somebody from your medical team or somebody from that department, they can talk about it. If it is somebody from another department or somebody that has not been on your medical team, that is a violation of HIPAA.
If you're a minor, they can tell your guardians, and then your guardians can tell everybody.
There is that.
You're screwed if your guardian is your doctor.
Yeah. So yeah, kids, be very careful what you tell your guardians. Or what you do before you're 18.
Amber, don't say okay. Don't say so. Yeah, kids. After we're talking about shoving a dice up your ass,
sweetheart, I can guarantee you it's going to be a 16-year-old that tries that.
Oh God, I had the worst idea in my mind.
Hold on.
You know I'm right.
It won't be this.
D20 alien beats.
It won't be this time.
One. Cameron, I can guarantee you somebody has made those.
Probably.
There's no probably about it.
You can cut this out if you want, but Amber, I kind of agree with you that it'd probably be a curious 16-year-old because I was a curious 15-year-old with a broom, and I will just leave it at that.
Oh no!
I know people. I have heard stories. We are not going to repeat those stories.
Oh.
Please tell me it wasn't a wooden one.
No, it was a plastic one. Anyway, cut the part out, please.
Oh no, that's dated.
If you generally want me to cut that out, I will.
Yeah, actually, please.
I've heard of having a stick up your ass, but that's a new one.
I thought about it for a second. I was like, I don't want to be known as Broom Boy by this fan base.
No problem, man. It's gone. It's done with.
Thank you.
No problem.
Bloopers.
No, not even in bloopers, man. That's too much.
There are some things that we will. They will hit the cutting room floor and burst into flames.
Yeah.
Not many, but a few.
Personal shit like that's not even bloopers, man. Maybe when he's 80 or something, he doesn't care anymore.
Right.
All right. Let's get back on track.
If you notice a slight cut at this moment, everyone, it's because we went off on a massive tangent that will not be available.
Pretty much.
We'll just say it involved dice. Anyway, completely unrelated to the question, that's all. Okay, here's one. As a player or a DM, how do you encourage your fellow players to step out of their car? Not for
A lot of you will notice that I regularly will say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And target a specific player, especially if I'm finding that they're being extra quiet. I will also do this thing where if somebody's, if I can tell they want to try to do something and they're not sure if it's okay, I'll either ask, "Hey, what are you thinking? Do you have any ideas?" That type of thing. Or I was going somewhere with that. Yeah, or I'll come up with the suggestion myself. Hey, what do you think? How can we do this?
Amber said it best, actually. Like, no joke. That's the best answer.
Yeah. Just be polite and encourage people. Say like, "Hey, have you got an idea on what to do? Do you want to have if someone's doesn't feel particularly comfortable with role playing, give them give them a fairly simple, not easy, a fairly simple thing to role play. Like maybe as an example that I would do, if they're at a tavern, maybe someone sees them and wants to have a chat with them, or they go shopping, they go buy stuff, and maybe it's a shopping session, and you politely say to them, "Hey, do you want to maybe role play the purchasing of whatever it is you're buying?" Because once they get comfortable doing that, maybe they'll go, "Okay, well, I'm really comfortable with this stuff. Maybe I can push myself a little bit more." The trick is just to make them feel comfortable to push themselves. You can't force it, as Amber pointed out. You just got to make them feel comfortable.
I've also noticed the people who tend to not be comfortable with role playing, when you help them slightly get out of their comfort zone and realize they like role playing, they end up being the best role players by the next campaign you're in, or even the current campaign you're in. Inside every anxious being who's scared to show their stars, their stars tend to shine the brightest when they finally have the chance to.
And I mean, for people who are just getting into it, if you're afraid to roleplay, don't be. You might feel silly or goofy or whatnot, but everybody else at the table either feels that way or has felt that way. And if you're somebody who's just not huge into roleplay, do what I do. Instead of acting it out, say, "Hey, my character is doing it this way." Or, she would say something along the lines of this, or, this is the general information she would convey.
Yeah, definitely. The light nudges are probably the best way to do that. Or, as Amber said, you don't have to roleplay. Just tell them like it is. My character does that. No.
And if you're afraid to roleplay because you've watched Critical Role or something, you see everybody does these awesome voices, or
That is not the
no,
standard.
No.
that is not
I-
how it works. Those
I
are
can actually-
professionals.
Yeah, they're professionals. A really good thing I would recommend, and like as a complete contrast to that, in terms of a professional voice actor, is LA by Night, which is a Vampire the Masquerade game that is hosted by I forget what the storyteller. There we go. The storyteller for that is Jason Carl, who is one of the big weeks for Vampire, and I think overall for White Wolf. Man is not a professional voice actor, but he still is able to portray the characters as a storyteller in a really cool way. It's the simple. He doesn't do voices. He simply changes the cadence of his voice. If he's playing a character who needs to talk quickly, he will talk quickly. If he's talking of a character that's planning he has a character who's trying to plan something, maybe he'll slow down or be a bit more monotone in his voice. If he's playing a character that's designed to be big and a potential threat in the future, the voice gets loud and they talk in a very condescending way to the other players. You don't have to do a voice. As someone who has done theatre training, we get taught that accents are the last thing to focus on. If you focus only on the accent, you may have the perfect accent, but you are going to be a terrible performer.
On the flip side, somebody like me, I do accents super easy. I drop into accents, out of accents, especially when I'm talking to somebody who has a different accent from me. And I don't even realize I'm doing it half the time. But changing the tone of my voice, changing the pitch of my voice, that's not something I'm capable of doing anymore. So I don't often. Occasionally you'll hear me like do something super high pitched, make something childish or whatnot, but it's not something I can maintain for long.
And yeah, if you ever do want to get into doing voices, do it. It doesn't matter if it sounds silly. It really doesn't. All about having fun and ignore people when it's the way you.
The most important part is always that you're having fun.
Alright. Now, this question is for all of you. Was there ever a time, as a player or a DM, where your party solved an encounter or puzzle with a solution so out of the box that it sticks to you to this day?
I've got a few of those stories. I had gone off on a recon mission with a friend of mine. At the time, he was playing a half-orc probably a warrior or something along those lines. And I was playing a halfling bard. We stumbled into this camp. It was just the two of us, and we were outnumbered. So he picks me up like a football, tucks me under his arm, runs across the camp, and tosses me up in a tree. It worked. They couldn't hit me, and I could shoot at them when I wasn't doing other stuff.
There will always be the blue tit mafia. I don't think anything my players have ever done will ever beat the Blue Tit Mafia. I'm genuinely trying to think if there have been other times where players have beaten an opponent in a way that normally wouldn't be. That has made me go, okay. But all I can think of is the Blue Tit Mafia.
Well, it really stuck to you.
If someone wants to draw a Blue Tit wearing a fedora, please. I will.
And we are talking the birds.
Yes.
What about you, Invader?
I'm trying to think of another one because all I can think about is one I've told before, and that's the fucking a Kraken to avoid combat story.
Oh, anything.
That story's going to be on the new episode.
Okay.
I think I told that story before you joined in on the last episode Behind the Screen.
I think so too.
I haven't started editing that one.
You will hear it soon then.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a simple one then. First combat encounter I ever had, I rolled to seduce a bugbear, and I made out with a bugbear, and then another player stabbed it and killed it.
Make love and war.
Exactly.
I mean, if it works.
I like playing characters who have high charisma, because I like seducing, not because I want to live out the fantasy of being a fuck machine, because I like finding ways to distract things by getting things horny.
Not my choice, but
Whatever works for you, Buckaroo.
I'm just saying, if I gotta be a whore to win combat, I guess I'll be a whore.
Moving on. All right. What are your favorite things about in-person D&D and online D&D, and which do you prefer?
I think for me it depends on the group. If I'm playing with old friends or people that I know really well, in person is always fun. Because there's a lot of joking that goes on behind the scenes and a lot of silly stuff. And there was this one really awesome scene about a year ago in my group. And it was the first time my group had gotten together in person in several years because COVID. And just, we were all hanging out in the room, and it was this very emotional scene, this very high-strung conversation between one of the NPCs and one of the players. And it was also a pivotal moment for the game. Decisions were being made that were like, is this player staying in the game? Is this thing happening? Is this sort of... And being able to see that play out in person was phenomenal. Although they had the rest of the room in tears. And then I have video proof. I saw this start to play out, and I'm like, no, we need to be able to save this for posterity. And it's not really something you can do online, because there's actions that happen. There were up and moving around, and it's really awesome. On the flip side, when I'm playing with a group I don't know terribly well, or when I'm running groups for newbies, online is easier. One, because I have a lot more resources at my fingertips. Two, because my camera's off, I don't feel like I have to put on a show. Whereas with my friends, I never feel like that. They're my friends. They know where my comfort zones are. But with people I don't know, I can do the vocal stuff, but I don't have to like sit here and look pretty and do certain actions, act a certain way, hold myself a certain way. Maybe it's just a girl thing, being raised to always be that way, but I feel like I can relax a little bit behind the computer. Somebody else? Anybody?
I've I will be honest, I have never actually done a physical D&D game before. The closest I ever got was this session 0, and then that fell through. So I've only ever had experience with the online, but I would say that it doesn't matter if it's online or if it's in person. The important thing is, do you like the people you're playing with? Because at the end of the day, you're willing to put up with them for at minimum 3 hours a day. And if you're not willing to do that with those people, that doesn't sound like fun to me.
No.
I love hanging out with you people, and I don't mind the fact that we're scattered all over the world. I'm having fun with you guys, and at the end of the day, that's what's important to me.
One of these days, in a year far in the future, we might all get to one. So who knows, right?
I've got a plan. I've got a plan.
You got a plan. What about you, Invader?
I've never played in person. So I feel like I'm not the one to make a judgment. However, I can say that if I were to do, it'd probably be like I can imagine in person for me. I'm saying that as like a what if thing. I can imagine Jin doing it in person. The aspect I would like about that the most would probably be being able to like just be around people, I guess, people that I trust and love. But like on the flip side, much like Amber, I don't have to have my camera on playing, so that's like the biggest plus for me doing it online.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I actually prefer in-person D&D. Don't get me wrong, I love online D&D, but for me, in person, the group of, or you have the backside of a wrapping paper with is the grids and shit. You draw it all out and imagine everything. It can be a lot of fun, and
It definitely can be.
it's the way I learned. It's the way I did it for years. I actually did not do online D&D message for y'all. That was my first time playing online D&D.
Honestly, I couldn't tell.
All right. Speaking of all right, for newer D&D. I mean, not for newer D&D. Sorry, for a newer dungeon master, it's their first game. How many players do you think they should have for their first campaign or for the first one shot?
3.
3 to 4?
For
always have at least one experienced player.
don't go too big on your first game.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah. Because you're gonna. Nobody's perfect. We're all human. And we suck as a species.
It is a rare game that I don't get called out because I contradict myself.
People, let's be honest, people have been playing since the very beginning, still make mistakes. It's bound to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
I just realized that was my last question. Do any of y'all have any questions?
I know we have questions. So when you're playing in person, I guess this is a question for Zane since the other two haven't. What are your favorite figures to use?
Figures?
Minifigs.
For character, creatures, NPCs?
Any of it.
Any of it?
Yeah.
Well, when I started playing D&D, I was in high school and we would play or go to the card shop down there. But in our library, we had, some of us could use the 3D printer that was there back when 3D printers were. So we get to 3D print our minis and paint them. And it probably costs $1 to use the spool to make it. And that was probably my favorite thing to use for my character. But for monsters and stuff, we have these little marbles that we'd use for like little minions, and every once in a while, a friend would have the mini for a big boss or something. That's usually how we did it.
Nice. Nice. Let me see if I can grab one of mine. I know I've got like a million here somewhere.
I sadly
There's
lost my minis to Hurricane Harvey.
So I have a very dear friend of mine who does resin and 3D print figures. They are not really meant for D&D, but like I've got all sorts of little animals and whatnot that we use. They make great monsters, especially the dinosaurs.
You ever meet a bear?
I've got one of those around here somewhere. About the same size, too.
Invader, do you have any questions, Chance?
I'm thinking.
Okay, I actually have one. If, as a player, would you prefer to start a new campaign in an urban setting or a rural setting?
Good question.
It depends on the game I'm playing. It really depends on the game I'm playing. Because Delta Green, definitely rural. Those games are a lot more fun. Urban's always interesting too, but rural, I feel like you get more out of it. And you don't feel so overwhelmed because there's not like 10 million things you could possibly be doing or checking. For Dungeons and Dragons, I love the urban settings because there's so much going on. You've got the bazaar, you've got the taverns, you've got anything and everything at your fingertips.
For me, it also depends, but I'm gonna contradict Amber here for a sec. I actually prefer a rule set when starting a D&D campaign, especially if you're starting lower level, because you don't feel as overwhelmed to make the decision. And lower level, you're in a role setting. There's not a lot that's going to really be dangerous for your character. But if I was playing Cyberpunk Code Red, definitely an urban setting, because role settings for that are really hard to run. It's just a lot easier to get into the flow of things if you're in an urban setting for that game.
Yeah. What about you, Invader?
I'd probably stay rural for the same reasons as Amber, personally. Again, I've only ever done 4 and 5 campaigns, including this one. So I have very baseline takes in some aspects.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. After you answer your own question, Cameron, because I could see you had an answer.
Oh no, I was thinking of another question at the same time. But I would say that a rural setting, whether it's like a small little village or even just traveling along the road in fantasy settings, or even indeed in something like Delta Green, one of my all-time favorite settings was one of my all-time favorite sessions I ran was set in a rural area. A smokestack town, single chimney smokestack town. But yeah, obviously it depends on the system you're playing as well. It's a bit difficult to consider how Cyberpunk would play in the middle of, I don't know, bumfuck nowhere, USA versus a major metropolitan area.
Being attacked by nomads and raiders. Fucking fine. That's how that works.
That's what you get for being in Wyoming.
Can't have shit in
It was
Ohio.
upstate
Am I right,
Nevada.
fellas?
All right, you had a
All right.
question, Invader?
All right, so we've here on Behind Screen have talked about like funniest moments and moments we've held with pride, like moments where a roll of the dice made us really clutch up a victory. But like, we're all role play based players. We like to role play. So, what is the most emotional moment you've ever had in D&D? Either by you, your character, or another character. Like a moment where after the session, everyone in the party was like, "Oh fuck!"
So, Ski actually did this to me. We were wrapping up a chapter of our game, getting ready for the new one. And basically, we were staging a coup. We had cleared out the city of innocence. Somehow, I don't know how we pulled that off without tipping anybody off. And one of the things I had to do, the area we were in was primarily undead. But there were a couple of hags that had been working for us, twin sisters. One of them had been murdered by the people we were staging the coup on. The other one, well, I went to get her out of town. And she refused to leave because she wanted revenge. So instead of leaving, my character had this very emotional conversation with her of, you know, she's avenge my sister, avenge me, get even, protect our people. And then she turns around, she's got this potion marine. She's like, there's one final ingredient. And then you're going to take this potion, you'll know when to use it. And she fucking leaned over the cauldron and You can guess what the final ingredient was. My character was... That was crazy. And then 20 minutes later, my character is dealing with somebody who had defected from the council and had been basically feeding us information. And we didn't realize how sick he was. And he's like, I'm dying. You need to go. And me, being me, the type of character as I play, Cameron can attest to this, refused to leave him. She's like, you've only got a matter of minutes. I am not leaving you here to die alone. I spent most of that session bawling my eyes out.
I think for me, one of the most emotional things I did, I had a Call of Cthulhu game. I might have mentioned this in the previous behind the screen, where a player, not for any fault of my own, not for any fault of them, not for any fault of me, not for any fault of anyone, they just couldn't commit anymore to the game, which is perfectly fine.
Things change. Life changes.
Yeah. So they said, hey, do you mind if I bow out? And I said, sure, no problem. So we had their character had gone to Egypt. And the character got attacked on a riverboat heading down the Nile. When they got airlifted back to Cairo to be taken back to the States. And that was their character disappearing. The character, sure enough, disappeared for a while. We never saw the character again, but I said to them, you know, you've got all your assets and whatnot. What do you want to do with them? And they said, well, I want to give them to the other players so that they can use them. And I said, that's no trouble. Why don't we do this? So one of the other players was playing the disappeared character's niece. So what happened was there was a special clause put into the missing character's will that if they went missing, they were to be almost effectively immediately declared dead or the equivalent, and all their assets were to go to the niece. So lawyer knocks on the door. The niece was living in an apartment above a cafe of another player owned. So lawyer comes in and says, hello, I represent your uncle who's gone missing. We have something to show you. Would you mind popping by the offices? They say, sure, no problem. They head to the office, everyone gathers. And what we'd done was we'd recorded a little audio segment for the missing character to say, as my final will and testament, all my assets go to my niece. And the players, all of them started crying because this very somber event where, you know, we were acknowledging that the character was no longer in the game, which was fine in the sense of we're not going to shame the player for stepping out. But we actually had a very nice emotional moment where everyone went, oh, wow, that's a really nice way to send off a character. They actually pinged the player and they joined to just listen in on the last hour of that session.
think for me, the most D&D moment I've had, this was about a year and a half into the, and it was a Warhammer 40k, and we were being attacked at our base by an overwhelming force. And we fought back for as long as we could. And they just reached a point where I feel like my character would have been, I gotta buy them time. So I essentially convinced the rest of them to run while I made sure they weren't followed. And after they ran off, it was about 30 minutes of me fighting against them and rigging the whole base. It got to the point where they were all inside. I was near death, and they had supposedly captured me. And when they went to start interrogating me about where they were, saying something along the lines of, "Can you tell us where they went? We will offer you a clean death." And essentially, I just spit in the guy's face and said, "Dead men already," and blew the base. I think that was the most emotional moment for that campaign, because after that year and a half, we actually all were still on our original characters. It hit everybody hard.
I actually have a second one. And this one is a bit of a spoiler for anyone who listens to the other podcast I was on. Sorry, honey, I have to take this. We retired my first character after the third scenario because, well, she ran out of sanity. And sorry, I actually have the speech right here that she gave, but I could read this if you guys want me to. Entirely up to you.
Go for it.
All right. So, character's name was Roizen. And her handler at the time was Snedeker, and one of her cellmates, which is teammates, was named Ryan. So, Roizen sat in a room at Camp Peary, talking to her best friend, Daniel. Logically, she knew that he wasn't really there. He couldn't be. He'd been dead for years. She still remembered watching his eyes go strangely calm as he was brutally gunned down in the dirty scrubland of the Syrian DMZ. But here he was in a room, talking to Roizen as if nothing had changed in the 4 years since she'd carried his lifeless body out of harm's way to be buried at his family plot. The talk was productive. Daniel convinced her, in his roundabout way, that it was time to return home. A quick call to Snedeker, and Roizen handed over the old laptop after assuring the agent that she would keep in touch. With a hug, she wished him well, watching the shimmering black shadow of her brother encouragingly nod from behind the agent's shoulder. She soon made another call to Ryan, but couldn't bring herself to let the phone ring more than once. Instead, she sent him an encrypted message via the old channels. Off to the villa for a long spell. Fond regards and many happy returns. Being seen you. Her bag's already packed, complex arrangements made, and all the right palms greased to get her out of the States with little fuss. Waiting for the Air Force lift to take off, Roizen held tightly desperately onto the small thumb drive containing an image of the computer, as well as a collection of photographs from her work with RSL. There was only one last call to make. The plane's engine began to spin up when the call finally connected, and she heard a familiar voice on the other end of the line. Her voice almost choking. She eventually answered. Abba, tell everyone I'm coming home. I'll be in Jerusalem tonight. See you soon. Several pairs of ghostly hands rested on her shoulders reassuringly as the plane lifted off into the night. It was pretty heavy. It took us about a week and a half to write that. We went back and forth for a bit. But she was seeing ghosts by that point, so it wasn't safe for her to be out in the field. However, rumor has it she will be making a guest appearance on Sorry Honey at some point in the future. Maybe. I have not recorded anything for them.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has one.
Can I give my most emotional one?
Oh,
'Cause I was
shit.
thinking
I'm
about
sorry,
mine.
Invader. Go ahead.
Because I was thinking about
Please.
mine
I want to
during
hear
that. Okay. So there have been a few. But I think to me, the one I typically go to the most was during my second ever campaign. I was playing a human-born tiefling. A human variant tiefling. Don't ask.
Not the weirdest thing I've heard. By a long shot.
I know it's not. And the whole campaign, like each of us had like our own moments where it's like each of the characters got face to face with their own demons, and we all fought them together because like there was a twist in the campaign that every player character was related by the same father. So we got to mine, and here's Laxian being face to face, and this was a boss battle with his abusive mother. Now, the party knew just how bad her mom was. The characters and the players. So, Laxian looks to each of them and goes, "She's mine." And all the players all said in unison in character, "Sure, agreed." And so here's Laxian charging at his 8-foot-tall mother at his current stature of 5'3", and just fucking wailing on her. He's going like ballistic, more so than I've ever gone, more so than any other character I've ever played. And you have the party fending off like some of the enemies she's summoning, and also giving him bark inspirations and like power boosts to make it even more satisfying. I get to the final hit. And instead of like stabbing her or anything, I have him take off his gloves and strangle her. I strangle her and say he watches the life drain from her eyes, filled with rage and the blood covering him. She then dies, and he falls to his knees, and he just starts laughing. Laughing and crying, laughing and crying. And I say this. After all the pain she caused me, I thought it'd be more satisfying. And at the end of the day, I still feel hollow after it. ah, Horse! I couldn't even have a satisfying kill for her as well. Because, little context I forgot to mention, she wasn't herself. She wasn't coherent. She was a beast at that point, like in a beast form. So he couldn't even get the satisfaction of killing her as her.
Ouch.
So he was pissed, sad, filled with sorrow. And just the other one of the players, her name was Rava, put her hand on her shoulder and just said, and just hugged him and just let him cry. That to me will always ring in my memory because it was just such a beautiful way to end like a heavy storyline, because she was prevalent throughout the whole campaign up to that point. Like, she wasn't the BBEG, but there was a moment I remember where it's like she appeared with a hallucination of his dead child in her hand, just to mock him. So yeah, she was looming throughout the whole campaign up to that point. So it was still a satisfying kill, but that moment I'll always remember.
I think
So, one more question. Let's take this back to a little more lighthearted.
please.
What is something that you always put on your characters just because? In Delta Green, all of my characters carry stakes and holy water. Wooden stakes.
I don't really have a thing that I mean, I'll tell you, I can say this now. Laya was not meant to be anywhere near as thirsty as she is currently. She was. She was originally the plan was for her to be.
She was not going to be a typical bard.
Yeah. And then and then the bandit camp happened. And I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm going to make her thirsty, but also a thirsty Dom.
God, that moment still goes so hard, by the way, Cameron. Can I just say, I still think about that good toy moment.
I think for me, the one thing I well, I didn't do it for the one shot, but I usually have a character missing a finger in some way, shape, or form, only because I'm a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed games. And
the one
I
shot
always
set
think
in
a character
Renaissance
having a
Italy.
hand like this is just perfect.
Yeah.
And it's always a ridiculous reason for me missing. Like, one time, when the players asked why he's missing a finger, I was doing the I have all my fingers trick and missed.
The next one should have had it chewed off by Chirp.
And then go ahead, Invader.
Oh no, you were still going. I'm sorry.
All right. And for the first character I ever made that had the missing finger, I didn't take into account why he had a finger, so when my DM asked me, so why's your character missing that finger? It got bit off by a halfling that was imbued with a dark magical artifact, like the ring I was wearing.
You golemed your finger.
Yes.
See, if Dumbledore just cut his finger off when he put the damn ring on?
No. It was a halfling that was being controlled by a dark magical artifact that liked the ring I was wearing, so in response it bit my finger off to take the I didn't even know the golem. Damn it.
He just wanted the ring.
Yeah, he just wanted the ring. And so it became my character's backstory became he is hunting for that motherfucker because that was his family's ring.
I once created an NPC based off of a joke that I heard. The character was called George the Fingers. And his one hand, he had all on his non-dominant hand, he still had all his fingers. But on his dominant hand, he was missing his ring finger and his pinky. And when he got asked by the players, why are you called George the Fingers? He goes, well, this hand's fine. I mean, this finger's for pulling the trigger, and this one's for flipping you off.
What about you, Invader?
Every character I've ever made, I've always, I give them a piece that they always wear that's, integral to, their story. Like, Fabio had an earring that his sister gave him as a birthday gift. Laxian had a heart-shaped amulet that had a picture of his dead wife and allegedly dead child. Calvin had a magnetic hand that he worked on with his wife. Did I give something to Patch?
You made him a vine tentacle.
I'm sure we will find out what Patch has as we go.
Well, there's the hat.
I'd say the hat's important, but I also gave something like that to May. Yeah, the hat of holding. I think that would work. I'll have to think of how to be integral. But he does wear it while he takes a bath. He does wear it while he. Oh my god, that'd be so good. But he wears it while he takes a bath, so it's he clearly has importance to that.
Yeah.
Even Meowdy has something important that she wears. Despite me not coming, while I've been writing her backstory, I even thought of her hat's important.
Yeah, I've got one character like that. Only it's not something she wears. As key things happen throughout her story, she adds tattoos. And she's got her dead partner's name and the date tattooed over her heart. And she's got a full sleeve of flowers on one side, and each of the flowers has a meaning. And she's got her kids' names and birth dates and whatnot. And, yeah.
I need to find out why my Delta Green character's missing his ring.
There are plenty of reasons that could be happening.
I know, but it's always a ridiculous. It's never it's a serious reason. Lost it in an accident. It's always something that is.
It got chewed off by a rabbit book.
I got a little too frisky with a mimic, and it got my finger.
Yeah.
Well, that's all for today's episode. Yeah, on that note.
And on that massive bombshell.
that's all for this episode of Behind the Screen. I'd like to thank our lovely guests for joining us today. Thank you all very much. And as always, this is the Penmeister, signing off.
Kitty.